You already know Elias. You watched him hit the floor. You watched him put the phone down. You watched him choose. What you did not see was what happened after, because nobody tells you about the after. They tell you about day 1. They tell you about day 30. They show you the transformation montage, the cold showers, the discipline, the new man emerging from the ruins of the old one. But nobody tells you about day 67. Nobody tells you what happens when the work you have been doing on yourself attracts back the exact thing you did that work to survive. Nobody tells you that the greatest test of a retained man is not the screen at 2 in the morning. It is the woman who left when you were nothing, coming back when you are something, and looking at you like she always knew you had it in you. Elias was on day 67 when his phone lit up with a name he had not seen in 2 years, and everything he had built, everything, got tested in a single moment. Day 60 had felt like crossing into new territory, not dramatically, the way you realize mid-step that the ground beneath you has changed. The fog that had lived behind Elias's eyes for years was gone. His work had changed, not the work itself, but his relationship to it. He was no longer pushing himself to the desk every morning. He was being pulled there. The business he had registered on day 30 was breathing, small, early, but real. He had found a rhythm that felt less like discipline and more like identity. 5:30 wake-up, cold shower, 2 hours of deep work before the world had a chance to demand anything from him. Training 4 days a week, no screens after 9 p.m. He had stopped talking about what he was building, not out of secrecy, out of understanding. A man who talks about what he is building before it is built is spending the same energy twice. Elias had learned to keep the fire inside, to let it heat the work rather than warm the room. And people had noticed, not because he announced anything, because presence cannot be faked, and a man who has stopped leaking his power carries himself differently than the men around him. His colleagues noticed, his friends noticed, even strangers on the street seemed to hold his gaze slightly longer than before. He was not the same man who had sat hollow in that apartment 2 months ago. He was something different, something he had worked for, something he had earned. And on day 67, at 11:47 in the morning, while he was in the middle of the best flow state he had experienced in his adult life, her name appeared on his screen. Her name was Amara. And if you need to understand why that name on that screen at that moment hit Elias the way it did, you need to understand who Amara was to the man he used to be. 2 years ago, Elias had loved Amara the way a hollow man loves, completely, recklessly, with everything he had, which was not very much, because the man Elias was 2 years ago had nothing real to offer. Not because he was a bad man, because he was an empty one. He had been leaking his power for years before he understood what leaking meant. And a man who is pouring himself into a screen every night has nothing left for the woman sitting across from him at dinner. Amara had not left because she stopped loving him. She had left because she could not find him. He was there physically,
but the real Elias, the one with fire and direction and the capacity to be fully present in his own life, that man had been disappearing one night at a time for years. And one morning, Amara had looked at the version of Elias that remained and made the only honest choice available to her. She left. Elias had told himself at the time that she was wrong, that she had given up too easily, that love was supposed to be unconditional. He had spent 6 months angry, then 6 months numb, then he had found retention, and somewhere in the first 30 days he had understood something he could not have understood before. She had not left a good man, she had left an absence, and he could not even be angry about it, because he had been an absence. And now, on day 67, the absence had become a presence, and Amara had noticed. Her message was simple. 4 words. Can we get coffee?
Elias stared at the message for 11 minutes, not because he did not know what to say, because he could feel something happening inside him that frightened him. Not lust, something older and more dangerous than lust. Hope. The specific hope of a man who spent 2 years building himself, and somewhere in the back of his mind never fully admitted what he was building toward. And here it was, arriving at day 67, like a test designed specifically for him. Because the universe does not test a man with things he has already conquered. It tests him with the thing he still wants. Elias went to the gym that afternoon and trained harder than he had in weeks, not to feel good, to think. And while he moved weight and his body did what it had been trained to do, his mind worked through something that no amount of cold showers had prepared him for. The question was not whether he still had feelings for Amara. He did. The question was something more specific, something more honest, something Marcus Aurelius would have recognized immediately. Why am I building what I am building, and for whom? Because there is a version of self-mastery that is genuine, that is done because a man understands his own nature and chooses to govern it. And there is a version of self-mastery that is performance, that is done because a man hopes the right person will eventually see it and return. And if Elias was honest, completely honest, he was not entirely sure which version he had been living. He went home. He sat in his apartment. He did not open his phone for 2 hours. He just sat with the question. Because a man who cannot sit with an uncomfortable question is a man who is not yet as free as he thinks he is. He replied to Amara on day 68. Not that night. The next morning. After his cold shower. After his deep work block. After he had done everything the protocol required of him, regardless of what was sitting in his messages. Because he had learned something in 68 days that no single moment could undo. The protocol is not for the easy days. The protocol is for the day she messages you. He met Amara for coffee on a Thursday afternoon, and sitting across from her, Elias understood 3 things simultaneously. First, she was different too. Not the woman who had left.
something quieter, something that had been through its own fire in the 2 years between then and now. Second, the feelings were real, not the old, desperate, clinging feelings of the hollow man. Something steadier, the specific feeling of a man who is full enough to choose rather than hungry enough to grab. Third, and this was the one that changed everything, he was not the same man she had left, but he also could not know yet whether he was the man she was coming back to, because there is a truth about retention that most channels never say. Retention does not make you immune to the wrong choice. It makes you conscious enough to see it coming, and conscious enough to choose anyway. Elias looked at Amara across the coffee table, and he made the only honest choice available to him. He told her the truth. He was not ready. Not because he did not want her, because he was not finished yet. Because a man who abandons his mission at day 68 for the woman who left at day 0 has not become the man he thought he was becoming. He has just found a more beautiful distraction. Day 90 arrived without fanfare, no celebration, no dramatic transformation, just another morning. Cold shower, deep work, training, the work he had built continuing to breathe. But something had shifted in the weeks after the coffee with Amara, something the retention communities never warned him about, the emotional flat line. Not the dopamine flat line of the early days, something different, the specific grief of a man who chose correctly and still lost something. Because choosing your mission over the woman you love is not painless. It is not triumphant. It is not the moment the YouTube script makes it sound like. It is quiet and heavy and real. Elias sat with that grief the way he had learned to sit with everything uncomfortable since day 1, without running, without medicating, without opening a screen to push it back down. He let it move through him, and in the moving, it taught him something that 68 days of discipline had not. That real self-mastery is not the absence of feeling. It is the capacity to feel completely and choose anyway. Robert Bly would call this the integration of the shadow. The moment a man stops running from the parts of himself that hurt and starts carrying them with him instead. Elias was carrying his, and it was making him heavier in the best possible way, the way a blade gets heavier when it gains an edge.
Day 180. 6 months from the Thursday night when the phone went face down for the first time. Elias was not a different person. He was the same person, finally living at full capacity. The business had its first paying client, not a friend, not a family member, a stranger who found the work and paid for it because it was worth paying for. He had not spoken to Amara since the coffee, not out of anger, not out of avoidance, because a man who is building something real does not have the bandwidth for unresolved conversations with people from his past. Not yet, maybe not ever. And for the first time in his life, that was okay. Because Elias had discovered something that no amount of retention content had prepared him for. The goal was never the streak. The goal was never the transformation.
The goal was never even the woman or the absence of her. The goal was this, the specific feeling of a man who trusts himself, who knows that when the test arrives, he will not run from it, will not be destroyed by it, will not be defined by it. Simply sit with it, do the work anyway, and come out the other side more himself than when he entered. That was the war, and Elias was winning it. Not perfectly, not without loss, but winning it. The woman who left you when you were nothing is not the reward for becoming something. She is the test of whether you built yourself for yourself or whether you built yourself for her. And the answer to that question is the most honest thing you will ever know about where you actually are in this journey. Elias chose his mission, not because he stopped loving her, because he finally loved himself enough to know the difference between a distraction that looks like destiny and a destiny that requires you to stay in the work even when destiny shows up at your door wearing a familiar face. You are going to be tested, not by the screen at 2 in the morning, by something that actually matters. Stay in the work, do the protocol, let the test reveal what you are made of, and then, whatever you choose, choose it as a whole man, not a hungry one. Subscribe to Lone Warriors. This is where whole men come to stay whole. The war starts within.